from Washington to Dubai, over 13 hours of flight time. But we made it, a couple hour layover, but we were ready to go from Dubai to Nairobi. It was a tight plane ride. We were very happy to see. Welcome to Kenya. It didn't take us very long to realize that we were in a very different place. With very different driving styles and very different roads. But it was also very interesting to see going down the roads to see familiar things, such as Pepsi. And this is Nairobi's Central Park. Amazing how many people were walking the sides of the road, and how many people were in this park, just hanging out, laying down, sleeping, doing whatever. Then they had these big giant pelicans up in these trees, which stood about 4 feet tall. Not the trees, but the pelicans. The Java House was our place of comfort for coffee and for food and for internet while we were there. We had a lot of fun. And this is Hotel Kunste, which is where we spent the majority of our time. Peace, luxury, and comfort. Well, I think it was kind of far-fetched from our idea of that, but for there it wasn't too bad. And we adjusted and adapted the best we could. The courtyard there, though, was very beautiful and was very enjoyable to walk out of every day. Friday began the work. Started off with a little briefing at the hotel about what we'd be doing at the church. And here we have our welcoming committee. As you'll see, the children get thicker and thicker. Actually, when we pulled into the property, they cheered and yelled, almost as if we were stars coming into somewhere, I guess, but they made us feel really special. Here we are at our morning briefing, and Brother Mickey telling us about the history of the church and their program for missions and for ministry. Pastor Justice Lobos is a wonderful man of God, and what a privilege it was to get to be able to meet him that week. Grace Academy is doing the job right also, teaching the kids the Word of God, but also doing their best to give them the best education possible. Pastor Lowe's house is right on the property, just in case any mischief goes on. It was interesting to see all the classes and to get to know the students throughout the week. Here's their kitchen facilities, which mostly used open fire and a steamer. But we definitely got to enjoy the chance to get to know the kids on a personal basis by name. Here we are heading out into Nakuru, into the little city, little village where the church is at, and very different meat hanging up in windows. Would have never thought we'd see that. This guy better hopes he doesn't hit a bump, or he'd be in a lot of trouble. And then began our Friday night revival service, and it opened up with some wonderful singing. After the singing, it was time for preaching, and it was very difficult for me, a learning experience to have an interpreter. But God made it help me get through it, and enjoyed it very much. Afterwards, we got to enjoy the company of the people again. So friendly, so warm, and very inviting. We were tired though, and it was time to go eat. This restaurant was very interesting in that it had any kind of food you wanted: Thai, Chinese, American, at least the best way they thought they could make it. Saturday began VBS, which I know many of you heard about. And it is true that over 1,000 kids were there. And if you included all the workers, there were nearly 1,100 people there. The service was supposed to be done at 12 o'clock, and we did finish at 12 o'clock. But even at 11:45, 15 minutes before the service was to be completed, we still had children coming in. Here's Diana telling a story about Samuel. While many of the kids know English and know it well, the younger kids don't know it, so everything had to be interpreted.
The Bible says in Romans 5:8, but God commended His love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Yasema katika kitabu cha Warumi 5:8, bali Mungu aonyesha pendo lake mwenyewe kwetu sisi, kwa kuwa Kristo alikufa kwa ajili yetu tulipokuwa tungali wenye dhambi.
Even after Vacation Bible School, the kids did not want to go home, but we enjoyed their time. That was Rebecca and Nancy trying to figure out some of the words in Swahili. Sunday began a very long and exhausting and yet very enjoyable day. There were 5 services in all. There was a 9:30 to 10 o'clock Sunday school class. There was a 10 o'clock to an 11 o'clock service, which had ladies' meetings and men's meetings, teen meetings, and also a children's meeting. As a result, from our Vacation Bible School the day before, they had over 700 in children's church that morning. Then began the 11 o'clock to, well, whenever service with more singing. After the morning service and lunch, they held a special teen meeting. It was full of games and activities. I had the opportunity to preach to them, and then after that, there was more time to fellowship. And then it was time for our Sunday night service, where Jonathan McBride was the special speaker for the night.
Wana waamini ambao wako katika ulimwengu wakiwa wanashiriki na wengine nchini na kazi ambayo Kristo amependa tuweze kuitenda.
But it's also a burden to know that the gospel isn't done. It has to go much further.
Pia ni vyema kuweza kujua kwamba tunamaliza kazi nchini, inafaa kuendelea mbele.
And I hope we can take that burden back to my people.
Na natumai kwamba tunaweza kubeba ile mzigo na kupeleka kwa watu wetu.
And our church encourages them to send the gospel further.
Katika kanisa letu na kuweza kuwahimiza wapate kuendeleza.
Monday morning, we got to be a little bit lazy and sleep in and didn't have anything to do until lunch, where we went to the Mickey's house and they cooked us a wonderful lunch. But more than the food, it was great just to be able to fellowship with him and to encourage each other in the Lord. After that, we headed to Ngala School for the Deaf, where we were able to minister to the older children or teenagers in the school. Some of them were as old as 21, 22 years old. After a wonderful drama of the song "He Did Not Cast a Stone" about the woman who was caught in adultery, Steve Roth preached a message that was interpreted in sign language.
When I look at Peter, I'm going to be looking mostly in the book of Matthew. Now, Peter is mentioned in all of the Gospels and other places in the Bible, but the points I'm going to illustrate are mostly from the book of Matthew tonight. We know from that Peter was a fisherman. As we see the spawn.
Tuesday, we headed out to a volcanic crater. It's said to be the second largest crater in the world. It had stunning scenery and lots of dangerous little cliffs. They even gave you signs that would warn you, be careful or you could die. And some people didn't heed those. But I didn't die. But it was a beautiful part of Kenya and a great opportunity to see God's creation. After that, we headed to Habari Najima Baptist Church, where we did a little bit of outreach, promoting the special service for that night. This place was definitely not as nice as the surrounding area of the church at Grace. The church is not big, it's a beginning, or it was a young church, but they loved to sing. They loved to minister, and they were very encouraging. To open up the service, they obviously began with songs and singing, but they also allowed some to give testimony of how our church, Maranatha, helped them during the post-war elections, or post-elections war.
We are thankful for our visitors, especially them from the USA. The Lord has given you safety mercies. Welcome to Kenya. I'm thankful for what we were able to receive. That we were able, that you people were able to help those who were affected during the clashes.
Wengi wao walikuwa na shida.
Many of them had a lot of troubles.
Wengi wao walikuwa na shida sana, lakini mmefanya vizuri sana Pastor Miki kufanya kuongozi wenu na kusaidia sisi.
Especially that Pastor Miki was able to be guided by the Lord and to have you even come and make a visit here at our church. I'm thankful.
After the testimonies and more singing, Jeff Carlson gave, well, a half of a message that was rained out because it was so loud on the tin roof you couldn't hear him preach. So he preached about halfway. We tried to wait, but we decided to eat and to continue on with our evening. Wednesday, we got up early and headed to Sweetwater's tented camp. This was a day of relaxation and a lot of fun as we got to go on a safari, seeing once again God's magnificent creation, the animals. But it was a place that treated us very well. Here is our dining area where we got to eat. All of it is a tent, but all of it is very nice. And this was a lounge that always had free tea and coffee. These were our quarters, but you always wanted to make sure that you had everything zipped up. Because if you didn't have everything zipped up, all this nice stuff that had your stuff in it would be raided by these guys who would love to go in and take your stuff. But we didn't have any problems with that while we were there. Right outside of our tent was a watering hole. Here's the watering hole with these 5 rhinoceroses. That picture was taken right outside of our tent. But they do have armed guards just in case one of these guys gets a little wild. Not these guys, but the rhinoceros guys. And here we are heading out to the plains, the jungle, I guess you want to say, to see all the various kinds of animals. All these animals are wild. They're not hand-fed. And so you want to stay away from this guy, the hippo, which is actually kills more people in Africa than any other animal there. Here's a list of animals that we were hoping to see. They didn't quite make the list. But it was nice to relax like these guys at Sweetwater's tented camp. Some jackals we saw along the way.
Don't go over there, he just marked his territory.
They're probably wanting to get away from this lady as she was on the prowl. And this little bird here was attacking this giant ostrich. It was quite a sight to see. Here are some people lounging in the lounge. And here we are getting ready to eat some lunch. After lunch, we headed out on another safari where we saw another array of animals, zebras, and this little secretary bird. Giraffes, and these things. I can't remember what they are. Then we came back in for dinner where they sang Happy Birthday to Me, which was interesting. Then we were off at a night safari. Obviously the pictures didn't come out super well. Thursday morning we woke up to this. Once again right outside of our room in our tent. The highlight, though, for many of us came the next day when we saw 3 cheetah. After that, we headed back into Nakuru. We stopped at this little shop, and I'll let you ask Jeff Carlson about that picture. Anita Roth, I guess, doing her part in helping create this rhinoceros. And some of us were on one side of the world, others were on the other in that picture. Friday, we did a little bit of shopping for souvenirs and headed to the school for our last service. I would say that this was the hardest day for many of us, if not all of us. Seeing these faces for the last time, knowing that we may not see them again this side of eternity. But we were able to encourage each other and to help each other, knowing that one day we will see each other again, as long as we know Christ is our personal Savior. We all got together and bought them some gifts for the school, and the school presented us with this wood carving. Like I said, to say goodbye to these children, which we had gotten to know, many of them by name, gotten to know many of their personal stories, was very hard. To say goodbye and to let go. Many of them wrote letters to us, personally with our names, expressing their thankfulness and their gratitude for the support that we sent to the Mickeys and for our help that we provided throughout that week. After we said goodbye, we headed to our final resting place for the Friday night before our journey home, which is a very nice Mennonite hotel. That night we headed to the world-famous Carnivore Cafe, and the reason it's called the Carnivore is because it's full of meat, and that's what you had to eat. Saturday we went on a couple adventures. Well, anytime you go through Nairobi is an adventure, but we never think we saw 3 camels walking down the middle of the road. And there's Luke with his first kiss. We tried to keep things romantic out of it, but that had to be shared. We were at a giraffe park, and that building that you had just seen was the giraffe mansion, where you could stay there and have the giraffes actually come right up to your window. Then we headed over to the elephant orphanage. Many of these elephants are orphaned because of poachers. Poaching is still a very big deal there in Kenya. Kenya's beautiful skyline, and what a reminder it was that a world that is so different than us, but yet so similar in many ways. These people need Christ, and so thankful for the Mickey family who's doing the job of reaching these people, not just his people, but people all across Africa. And though times get discouraging, we can always find rest and comfort in these words, that our labor is not in vain in the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58.